website that I pulled up on my screen, and that's an Erasmus Plus project that we did together with Roma Tre University in Italy, Vives University of Applied Science in Belgium, National University of Ireland in Galway, Vytautas Magnus University in Lithuania, and then the non-profit organization, the Ethnic Kitchen Consulting that I run, was also involved, right? So those 5 different organizations, some of them universities, some of them NGOs, some of them universities of applied sciences, were involved in testing this approach in Europe, right? Because the approach was kind of designed and conceived in the United States. So, and this website is the result of this Erasmus Plus project, and showing the results of our testing this project, and involving some of the reflections of the faculty members that were involved in the project. So, and I was one of the co-authors and the managers of this project. So that's why I decided to talk about this, because I know it very well, and I'm very well familiar with the challenges that the faculty members and professors had while testing this approach in their classes. So, so I always start with, excuse me, I always start with a couple of examples, because since I run my own company, I also am an employer, and at least at our universities, I don't know what about your universities. Oh, the opinion of the employer is very, it's very kind of highly regarded, and everybody wants to kind of please the employers, and they poll the employers, and asking about whose students are the best, and all of this kind of stuff. So from the side of the employer, I can give you a couple of examples, because the universities of students of the Faculty of Creative Industry sometimes intern at my company, and in the department that I run at the university, I sometimes employ those students as part-time employees. So I give you a couple of examples. So one of the students is an intern at my company, and she was recommended by a fellow faculty member as a very good student, a very diligent student with high marks. And I was looking for somebody to manage our social media of one of my clients, right? So I asked her to help out. She said, yes, I want to do that. I'm very interested in social media. I would like to do this job. So I said, okay, so, let's come up with a short plan of social media or Facebook posts for this one particular month and this one particular theme that my client is interested in. And she didn't respond for a while. I got back to her. I asked her, so what's the problem? Maybe you changed your mind. You do not want to do this job. And she said, no, I still want to do this job, but I don't know where to start. And that struck me as something very peculiar, because she's already almost in her 3rd year, and we have this presumption that, oh, all young people, all youth is very interested, they know everything about social media, and they're social media wizards. But when I tasked that student and that intern with a very simple assignment, she kind of felt lost. She didn't know. She said, I don't know where to start when writing, this series of posts. So that was one example. Another example is here at our university, we always have to present our HR department with our qualification development plan. So since I have those 2 students working for me, I said, well, maybe there are some certain trainings or courses that you're interested in. So, we can submit those to our HR department, and maybe, they will compensate them, and you will be able to learn something new. And one of the students got back to me in a few hours after receiving my email and said, I don't know where to start to look for those courses. And again, that struck, this person is already in the 4th semester of his studies, and he's presented with a problem, right? The problem is you don't have this particular information, but you have the all the resources you can, and please, sir, go through those resources and find this information, and choose the most useful pieces of that information. And he felt at a loss. So for me, it's always this. So I always have this question, so how does that happen that after, 4 semesters, 6 semesters at the university, going to classes for, 4 to 5 hours a day, those students who are not bad students or good students still do not know how to perform the simplest tasks, right? And very often this is the feedback that we get from employers too. They're saying, oh, well, this academic, this academia, they're, we don't look at the diplomas, we don't look at the education, we look at the experience, because we feel that academia does not prepare, students for the labor market. And it's, on the one hand, it's understandable, because you do not want your new employee just to sit at your desk not knowing what to do, right? You want them to kind of come to the, start the job and start doing the work. So that's the difference between expert knowledge and expert thinking, right? So when we teach our students, very often we teach them what experts are supposed to know. So they read a lot of articles, they read a lot of textbooks and all of that, but that doesn't make you an expert. Right? So for example, just the fact that you know a lot of dates and a lot of facts from history doesn't make you a historian. Your ability to interpret those facts and build an argument based on those facts is what makes you a historian, right? So there's a big distinction between expert knowledge and expert thinking. And a lot of the traditional institutional education in Europe is basically based on expert knowledge and transferring expert knowledge to our students. But how do we teach them to think like experts? How do we actually teach them to use this knowledge for action, for actually doing the work? And this is what the Decoding the Disciplines approach is mostly preoccupied with. So do you have any questions at this point, or any comments? If you do, just feel free to raise your hand, or I don't know, maybe post it in the comment section, right? But this is where we come from, right? This is our kind of starting point. And then just a little bit of the history. The project, or the development of the Decoding the Disciplines approach, started in Indiana, at Indiana University, and it was with this called freshman, focused on the freshmen of that particular university, and it was started by a group of professors and who taught both education and history, and one of those professors was involved in this project, Erasmus Plus project that I'm talking about now. And when we asked them why he came up with this idea to develop this new approach, he said, well, I've been teaching for decades, and I have won many awards as a teacher and as a professor and all that stuff. But year after year, I noticed that my students always are stuck on the same things in my course. So there are a few things that are usually the same from year to year, where my students cannot learn them, or where my students get stuck in their learning process. He said, Professor Pace, he said, so it got me thinking, it cannot be statistically, it's not possible that all of my students, 100% of my students are stupid, or 100% of my students cannot manage this one thing that they're supposed to manage in the level of their education. So maybe it's not the students that are the problem. Maybe it's what I do and how I teach those things is the problem. And this is how he came up with this first step of the decoding wheel called bottlenecks to learning, right? So first of all, he says that we all notice in our teaching that we have the students do not understand certain things, right? And that it's difficult for them to grasp the meaning. What is an argument? How do you build an argument, right? Or how do you recognize person? How do you distinct from how do you discriminate between personal assumptions and objective facts in writing, for example, a paper, right? Or building an argument and things like that. So he said, so first step would be actually, it's very helpful to address those bottlenecks, or to understand those bottlenecks from the very beginning of our classes, of our courses. And he classified those bottlenecks into two categories. You see them on the screen. Cognitive bottlenecks. This is where a student cannot master a certain mental operation. And emotional bottlenecks, where students just do not like the content, because the content, for example, can be, I don't know, as a medical student, you can be learning about abortions, and you're a Catholic, right, or a Christian, and you are actually against abortions as such, right? So then that makes it very difficult for you to learn that particular topic or that particular subject, right? And those emotional bottlenecks can be of two types: the subject matter, which I've already mentioned, or the process of the course. So some of the students, if they are, to put it very simply, bored, or if they are not happy with the way the course is taught, right? So for example, they say, oh, there's just one person talking, and then, you know, there's a lot of reading of textbooks. I'm bored, I'm not gonna study that, right? So that's called the procedure bottleneck, right? The way we teach can be a bottleneck or a blockage to students' learning, right? So identifying bottlenecks to learning. Of course, when you say, okay, if I'm a new teacher and if this is a new course, how do I identify a bottleneck to learning? I do not have any experience with that. And you know, that has been addressed in the course, and you know, this wheel, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 is not necessarily, this order doesn't have, it's not set in stone. You do not have to follow this order necessarily, but you just have to be mindful about certain blockages that your students can encounter on their way to learning or mastering your subject. But whatever the bottleneck is, or whatever you know, or whatever your knowledge of the bottleneck is, I think the second operation is, or the second step is, maybe even more important than the first one, and this is uncover the mental operation that you, as a professor or as an expert, do when overcoming that bottleneck to learning. So for example, if a historian says, my students do not know how to build an argument, my question to that person would be, so what do you do when you build an argument? And this is really seems like a very kind of you know, of course, this is what we teach our students. But once we start doing, for example, decoding interviews, which is a technique to uncover mental operations of an expert or a faculty member, we learn that so many experts or faculty members just jump over certain steps of that road to uncovering a mental operation without even thinking it. Because when you've been doing something for a very, very long time, you become so good at it that you do not need to think about certain steps. You do not need to give them attention. You just kind of, you know, jump over them and go straight to the end of the process, right? Without even kind of thinking about all the you know, the turns that you took on the road. And this is a very so here, you know, on this you see an example of a decoding interview, but in our project in Europe, this was one of the most useful tools of uncovering mental operations, because one of the persons is a novice, right? So you, as a novice, so for example, you know, if you're a communication specialist and I'm not a communication specialist, I'm like, for example, from another field, I'm a mathematician, and you're trying to explain a communication concept to me, you know, then I can go through those decoding interview steps and ask you questions as a novice, and that would help you, or should be able to help you to uncover your mental operations. And this was kind of the most difficult step in the process for all of my colleagues who were involved in this project throughout the 3 years of the project. So what is a mental operation, right? And how do I uncover it? And why is it so difficult for me to explain how I actually think about the problem? Not what I know about the problem, but how I actually think about the problem. Some of those mental operations and mental actions are presented here on our website. Applied thinking skills, devising research questions, identifying the central argument in an academic text, integrating knowledge, mastering a concept, questioning personal assumptions. But there are more, you know, and maybe you can kind of talk about those. But to me, what's the most important, I think that at the center of all of our teaching, according to this approach, it's not the knowledge, it's not what I'm supposed to teach my students, what my students are supposed to know, but what kind of mental operations they're supposed to perform. And that, as I said, proved to be not as easy as it looks on paper for most of the professors who actually took part in this project and tried to apply it on themselves, right? Because it's very easy for us to go back to the shoes of a novice and kind of try to think like novices think. So as an example, I had one faculty member who was involved in this project, and she said, well, one of those decoding interviews made me go back and look at the notes that I took as a student when I was studying the course that I'm teaching. And once I looked at those notes, I was so surprised that I actually made those notes, because I don't remember not knowing those things. And I think that was a very kind of revealing moment for her, that the things that she took notes on during the classes that she took are so familiar to her now, so evident, that she doesn't talk about those things to her students anymore. And I think it's a very kind of good exercise to have those rubrics or those decoding interviews, and just to try and explain, or maybe just to draw a mind map or a concept map of your subject, explaining how actually the knowledge is formed within your subject. Okay, so this concept of mental operation is at the center of the decoding the disciplines approach, and it's not always easy for us to understand, because so much of our education, traditional education, is based on, so what are they supposed to know, not how they're supposed to think, but what are the students supposed to know. So once you understand what mental operation you have to perform to overcome the bottleneck, you can start modeling the tasks that are supposed to help your students master this mental operations. And there are a few tips how to do that. So metaphors or analogies really help. Replicating, kind of going step by step through the process with your students and reflecting on every step also helps. Emphasizing the relevance of every step also helps. So for example, I'm now teaching my students to produce a podcast. And there are many steps. So, students, they imagine, okay, so there's a podcast, so I take a microphone and I go and interview people. But there's just so much more involved in the preparation for a podcast. So first of all, you have to know what other people do. You have to understand what other podcasts your audience is listening to, right? Then you really have to understand the subject matter of the field. For example, our podcast is on the video games industry of Lithuania. So you really have to understand the industry and understand what topics are current there and so on and so forth. And usually students hate this preparation, right? They just skip it over and, they don't want to do that, right? And then they end up with very kind of, I don't know, maybe boring or very shallow podcast or content. So, so for me, it is very important to break that process down weekly. So the first week, maybe I say to them, listen to a podcast you like and reverse engineer the script of that podcast. So how could the script of that podcast have looked like, right? So that's one thing. The second week, try to read a few articles about video game industry and then tell me what themes are interesting for you in that article, right? So it seems to the students that we're not doing the podcast yet, that whatever we're doing is not related directly to what they're going to produce at the end of the semester, but these are the necessary mental operations that a professional or a professional producer would do, right? And for me, it's kind of, it's automatic. I would do it maybe in a day or two, but for students, it's not automatic yet. They do not have that discipline. They do not have that habit of doing the research, of looking at different podcasts and different articles related to the theme that they're interested in. So I have to kind of help them kind of, build that discipline for themselves or build that routine. So this is the modeling of the task. And of course, course, very often when we go to all sorts of faculty training that is provided by our universities, I run those trainings very often too. We learn about different methodologies, cooperative learning, substituting papers with podcasts, all sorts of other methodologies that are out there. And the question usually that I get is, so this is a nice methodology, so is it the only one? So is it like the panacea? Is it the only thing that I'm supposed to use? And the answer is no, right? The answer is it all depends on the mental operation that you're trying to help your students to master, right? And then, this mental operation will kind of dictate the kind of methodology or the kind of tasks that you want them to do. No, of course, not all of the papers can be substituted by podcast productions, right? Or video essays. And not all the assignments should be done in groups. Of course not. But it all depends on the mental operation that you are trying your students to teach. And this is the main challenge that I encounter in my trainings to faculty members, where they do not have those mental operations ready. They do not come into the training with knowing what those mental operations are, and then it becomes difficult to explain. So what you can do with that particular methodology or method of teaching. So usually I always advise starting with the mental operation and then looking for the right kind of method or task for that operation. Give students practice and feedback. So, this is, I will not really dwell too much on this step, but it's just probably important to say that if you are taking the students through a step-by-step process, it's very important that students have the chance to practice every step and to reflect on every step, right? So that we don't only talk about the final result, but we're always also talking about the intermediate steps and explaining to students how taking those steps will influence the end product. So feedback is very important, as much feedback as possible according to this approach, because this is what students really appreciate. And I think, I don't remember, I think Stanford did a research on students, students' evaluation of their professors, and that research showed that students do not really mind bad marks as long as they feel that they have a chance to correct themselves. So what they do mind is when they are only giving one chance to do something right, and then that's it, that's their final mark, right? But if they get, for example, a low mark, and then they know they will have a chance to improve it or to do the same step or task again and do it better, then they do not really, or if they get enough feedback about what they did wrong, then they do not really mind bad marks. So that's also something to take into consideration. Number 5, deal with emotional bottlenecks or lessen the resistance, the way it's also called. So we talked a little bit about the emotional bottlenecks already. As I said, there are subject matter or narrative bottlenecks, procedural bottlenecks, or lack of motivation, which is usually related to cognitive bottlenecks. And you will probably not know which ones you're dealing with before you get the students that you have to work with, right? So I think, and this is what the professor and the scholars who came up with this approach recommend, is kind of right from the very beginning of your course, trying to figure out and understand what personal assumptions your students are bringing into the course. So for example, maybe it's a creative writing course that is a requirement, but a few of the students have been told by their high school teachers or secondary school teachers that they're not good at writing. So they come already to your class with this personal assumptions, thinking that, oh, this is a hopeless case. I will not learn to write because I'm just bad at it. So the way people think that they're bad at drawing. Everyone, whom you ask, they usually say, oh, I'm terrible at drawing, But what does that mean, terrible at drawing? And who told you what terrible at drawing and what good at drawing is? Everybody can draw a line, so everybody can write a word. And then it's a matter of technique, right? And a step-by-step process that can lead you to being a writer. Well, maybe not a really good writer or not, Salman Rushdie, but, you can learn to write. Like everybody can learn to write a decent essay or a decent paragraph, right? But that would be one of the personal assumptions that students are bringing. So for example, our students, they're in creative industries faculty, they have business finances, and half of the class, when they come into that course, they say, you know, I'm really bad at math, so I will fail this course, right? And which is not true, because you know, you don't necessarily have to fail it. You just have to really go through the step-by-step process and understand every step to be able to succeed in that class. But then there are all other procedural bottlenecks, as I said. If students are bored, to put it very simple, or if they think they're overloaded with work and they have too much to do and it becomes like just overwhelming for them. So all sorts of these things, but the sooner you figure out those emotional bottlenecks, the sooner you can incorporate them or take them into account when designing your assignments and help students overcome that. So it's not really kind of trying just to forget about those personal assumptions and trying to leave them and asking the students to leave them outside of the classroom's door, but actually vice versa, asking those students to bring in those assumptions and then seeing how those assumptions differ from, for example, from expert thinking, and why expert knowledge is considered expert knowledge and not personal assumption, right? So that is one of the things that proved to be very kind of productive, especially when teaching a class of mixed backgrounds, for example, international classes, or mixed abilities classes where students come in with different understanding of usually electives, right? So this is very helpful, and this is really exposes that when you talk about those different perceptions and different personal assumptions, it helps the students to understand that the knowledge of the subject that they're learning or studying exists within this field of diverse opinions, you know, and it's always the negotiation of those diverse opinions that leads us to a certain kind of knowledge, or the expert knowledge in our field. Okay, assess students' mastery. So that's giving the grades to the students, and again, not maybe only one grade at the end of the course, but also assessing the mastery as it progresses, it goes along with in the course of your module. And then the final step, which was introduced much later in the process of the development of this project, is sharing the knowledge with your fellow faculty members. And again, the same as in the classroom of our students, in our faculties and in our departments, it's important to understand that our knowledge and our teaching doesn't exist in isolation. So in at certain schools, faculties are even forming those decoding communities where they help each other kind of figure out the best teaching process, or help to overcome students' bottlenecks to each other, and share the knowledge about the teaching, not just about the subject, what we do usually write either in do researches or write articles, but also sharing knowledge about how we teach. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about this practice. I see one of the comments in your universities, but very often what I encounter in many universities, that faculty, everybody works individually, everybody works in silos, and usually and I, as a new faculty member, when I just started teaching, I experienced that too. So I went into the process. I was given a subject which was business English. Or IT English, and nobody explained to me, how they did it, or what kind of materials they used. They just said, "Oh, okay, these are your students. This is the the learning outcomes you're supposed to reach. Good luck," And then I felt kind of lonely in that process, because nobody was sharing and then even at the department meetings, when all the faculties would meet, I didn't have I didn't have, like, nobody talked really about the teaching process itself. A lot of people talked about different other things, basically research, right, administrative stuff, but not about the teaching itself. And the teaching and the knowledge about teaching can only improve if and develop if it's shared. So this is the decoding wheel in a nutshell. If you just look at this website, Decoding Education, you will see a few cases, not mine, but of other professors shared. And also in the website, you will see one of the tabs is called ebook. So that ebook is available for free, and it also has a lot of cases from my colleagues with a lot of reflections. So you can look at that. And also we provide an extensive list of references to the findings of the professors at Indiana University that you might be interested in looking at. So if you look at that website, it's all there. See, you can filter. So discipline, for example, physics, applied thinking skills, right? And then you will get the cases that deal with those two. And the ebook is here, right? So that's, and then about page has all other references, that about the articles written by our American colleagues.